Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with my review for Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 3. Alright, so we're back for the third episode now of the new season for Stranger Things. So I thought this one was a little bit of a step down, I'd say, from the last two episodes. I felt like the writing went down a little bit, and I'm not sure if that's maybe because the Duffer Brothers didn't write this one. Sean Levy directed this one, who I really liked. I liked a lot of his episodes in season 2 and season 1 as well. But I think he's a really good director. I'm not sure who wrote this one. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, that would just be my first kind of comment on it. Though I thought there was some really great stuff in this episode. Some charm again with some of these characters. Mainly, I would say Steve and Dustin and Robin. I thought that was a really great trio in this episode. And then we had a lot of stuff good with Hopper and Joyce. And then, of course, the kids in there. So I did really like it. Some really great cliffhangers with Billy and all this kind of supernatural stuff that's going on. And they kind of intertwine Nancy and Jonathan as well. So anyways, love to hear your guys' thoughts on this episode and just the overall season. It doesn't matter how far you are necessarily, but just what you think of it so far, and what are kind of some of your theories going forward if you are only on this episode. But I know a lot of people are probably, making their way through the season already. But anyways, I'm taking my time with this one. I'm going to be doing daily reviews, so hopefully one episode a day going forward until I finish all 8, and then maybe I might make a kind of a season recap or something like that. I'm not sure exactly, but we'll have to see then. But if you enjoyed the review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Would really appreciate that as well. But without any further ado, let's get into a little bit of a recap, going over some of the most important things in this episode, and then I'll get to my rating, favorite character, and some more overall thoughts / theories about what we might see going forward in the coming episodes. Alright, so we start this one off with, first off, I think we start off with 11, Max, and they, how 11, I think, goes to visit Mike, Lucas, and Will, and that whole thing plays out. But the next scene then, after the intro plays there, is Joyce. So Joyce arrives at Hopper's house the next morning after stiffing him for the dinner the night before, of course. And I think we also see here too, where we see Hopper walk in on Max and 11 there, right? And she has her door closed to her bedroom. I love that scene, the whole way that played out. And then we see Hopper, kick back on the chair afterwards, like just happy that it's not Mike that's there, it's Max. And so that was a really great scene. Probably one of my favorites of the episode. That was really great. But anyways, so after stiffing him for dinner, Joyce shows up at his house and tells him about her magnet problem. And it's pretty obvious that Hopper not taking her seriously at this point, right? He kind of believes she's just making excuses for, dumping him pretty much, or bailing on him the night before. We see that he's pretty disappointed by it too. Pretty, feels betrayed that she didn't show up for the dinner. Says the first time since 9th grade that he's been stood up or something like that. So anyways, and Joyce doesn't even think it's a big deal at all, right? She just keeps going on about the magnet stuff. And so I thought that was also kind of a funny riff as well between these two characters in this one. But we find out then Joyce says she wants to go back to the lab, as she figures they are the ones that must be responsible for this machine that's creating this new magnetic field. And that then explains why these magnets aren't sticking. And she also tries to put them on Hopper's fridge. They don't work either there. They don't work there either. So one thing I will say though is, I guess it's not a huge deal, right, that magnets aren't sticking to people's fridges. But wouldn't some of the community come and be like, are your magnets sticking to your fridge? You know what I mean? I don't know. That just seems like a pretty kind of weird thing that, if you think to yourself, it's like, well, if none of our magnets are working on our fridge, wouldn't we have some type of conversation, and bring that up? I don't know. Maybe it's such a small thing that no one really cares, and maybe that's why Hop doesn't either in this scene. But it is what it is. And some people may not even have magnets on their fridge, right? So I guess that's possible too. Anyways, so we see Hopper still doubts her, but she's determined to go over there anyways, and so we see Hop drive them both over to the lab to kind of, basically disprove Joyce, right? show her proof that nothing is going on at this lab, and he knows, right? He saw the aftermath of it. He saw them board it up. He knows that there's nothing going on at the lab, and he just wants to make sure that Joyce knows that too, right? To basically prove it to her, and so that she can kind of relax, right? And so while they get there to the lab, then, or I guess it's technically the energy facility, right? They call it the lab, but that's really the underground part. Anyway, so while they get to the facility there, Hopper cuts the lock as it's been boarded up since, right? We saw that, I think, the very end of season 2, where we saw the guy with the beard waving them through. That was one of my favorite things from the second season, honestly. Like, just that scene that plays out where he's waving to them and they give him the middle finger on their way out. That was really great. But anyways, so we know it's been boarded up since. We know that it's been pretty much abandoned after what happened. That's pretty much it. Especially after that news story leaked, courtesy of Nancy, Jonathan, and the other guy, right? So, as Joyce walks into the lobby, then she remembers Bob's death and sees it play out again in front of her in slow motion, but that's honestly how the scene played out in the actual episode of season 2 as well. It was kind of slow motion. Everything was really slowed down. And kind of the sounds were kind of in and out as well. So it's a really good way of showing it in that episode, and it pretty much just replays here. Such a sad scene, man. Again, I said it, I think in my last review, Bob was one of my favorite parts of season 2, and his death, man, that really did hit hard. And so it was definitely an impactful callback here to season 2, and I think this also shows that she's clearly still affected by that, and to me that maybe explains why she was a little reluctant, or just like that she didn't seem to make a big deal of like at all about skipping on Hopper and not going out to dinner with them, because maybe she still thinks about Bob, right? And is having trouble kind of committing to someone new this time. Although even Hopper and her agree that it wasn't kind of a date. It was just a dinner to catch up. So anyways, I'm wondering then if that could explain why she's a little bit hesitant right now, and whether that, seeing that Bob death is going to spark some things again. And we also learn later in this scene that she is even wanting to move because she is still having trouble kind of confronting these, kind of fears or, kind of under the surface things that are still present as a result of the events in season 2 and season 1 with their son, right? So anyways, they make their way down to where the gate was. Basically, they make it down to the lab, and they find the wall and floor filled in with concrete. There's nothing there, right? It's really just abandoned. There's a bunch of broken glass, and it's all filled in with concrete. And it's all clear, right? Just as Hop said it was. So Hop says it's over. Everything has already been filled in. So everything is done, and it's over. Then we see the two of them discuss that they are still worried, or at least affected by those past events as I just mentioned. And then we see Joyce admit that maybe she's overthinking this situation as a result, right? Maybe these past events are just kind of making her more worried, more on edge, and that's why she thinks that these people are responsible for this big machine again, when that's definitely not the case, as we see. Or at least, to us currently, that's not the case, right? But it definitely could be. Anyways, so we then see Hopper confront Joyce about her moving away. He says he wants to keep her and her family safe in Hawkins. He wants to essentially, give the impression that it's safe enough to stay there and still live there. That was a really kind of heartwarming scene there between Joyce and Hopper, and Hopper wanting to keep her safe. That was some really great stuff, and it's going to be interesting. Joyce says they're going to sell the house, and so, how is Will going to react to that, right? All his friends are there in Hawkins, and he has to move. Same with Jonathan, away from Nancy, possibly. So it would be a really interesting dynamic, and I think that's definitely a road that I would understand Joyce wanting to go down. Right? And so we'll have to see how that plays out. But before that, we can kind of finish that conversation. They hear a sound down there in the lab, and so we see Hopper go to check it out, and he ends up getting beat up pretty badly here by this guy who appears right behind him, right? And kind of out of nowhere. I really like the whole rain in this episode, though I will say it created a nice backdrop for a lot of these scenes, especially this one where we saw the lightning strike and then all of a sudden the guy appears behind him. Of course, we've seen this in many, many other horror, sci-fi type shows and movies, but I did feel like it was really well used here. Anyways, so this is the guy. I kind of recognize him. I think we've seen him before, and I think he is the one that's been following Hopper around. We see him in episode 1, and then we also see him last episode when those guys were protesting. We see him walk by Hopper, and Hopper kind of look at him a little bit, and so I'm not sure that Hopper even gets a really good look at him in this scene, but I do think that is the same guy, and maybe he even followed him and Joyce there and beat him up. So I'm not sure if maybe that's one of the mayor's guys or something and he's not happy with Hopper, or that really does contribute to the whole supernatural opening the gate main storyline. I'm not sure at this point, but I don't think it's actually that big of a deal. I think it'll just be some guy that's not happy with him and try to beat him up. I don't know. Joyce then finds the guy basically driving away in his motorcycle as she finds Hopper there in the room. So we do know, that there's not any activity in the lab, or at least, it's kind of proven there. That guy wasn't involved with any of those guys. But anyways, so that was an interesting scene, and that's kind of where we leave Hopper and Joyce. All right, so after finding Billy in one of her vision things in the other dimension, I'm not sure exactly, I guess visits, right? Because she visits these people in this other dimension, 11. Anyways, so she gets spooked, right? She gets spooked, and I love this too, they're playing Spin the Bottle to find out who she's going to visit in the other dimension. That was pretty cool. But anyway, so she gets spooked, as Billy recognizes her in the other dimension and can somehow actually see her. And then we actually see from his point of view as well that, all he really sees though is just her flashing in and out in this kind of other dimension. He doesn't actually see her full reflection and is able to talk to her and interact with her, but he knows she's there, which is the big part, right? It's like, how in the hell does he know that she's there from that other dimension, right? And this is something that hasn't happened before. Max brings up that, Mike, could sense that you were there, but he didn't actually see her or know that she was there for sure. And so this is something that's new. This is something that's never happened before. So as a result, 11 and Max look into it a little bit deeper to see where Billy was and what he's up to and how he can somehow see 11 now. So after they find a bunch of ice bags in the bathtub and that Lifeguard pack, right, I guess a fanny pack, right, in the trash can in Billy's bathroom, they get a little more suspicious here, right? And obviously, a body could have been in that ice bathtub. There's a little bit of blood on the fanny pack, so something is up here, and they got to look into it. So they head to the pool, and they find out that the pack belongs to Heather, who is the other lifeguard girl, who hasn't come in for her shift that day. So everything's kind of adding up here, and it's not looking good. So 11 decides to look for Heather in that other universe, goes to visit her there in the shower room at the pool with her picture from that board, right? And this is a really interesting scene here because at first it's like, oh, right? Like, we see the mailbox, we see the red door, and just all of a sudden we kind of, we already know, right? We already know what kind of happened with Heather, but I like the suspense this creates with this because she doesn't find her right away, right? She has to kind of go through these obstacles to actually get to her and is able to interact with her. So instead she finds a red door, and when she goes through it, she finds a bathtub filled with ice. Could that have been Billy's bathtub, right? And suddenly, really suddenly, this was quite a jump scare, I will say. Heather pops out of this ice water in the bathtub and basically screams or kind of shouts, "Help me!" And then is just kind of flushed down, it looks like, right? She kind of falls down into the water, which is really kind of through the ground of this universe thing, right? And just kind of in all blackness. And so she falls down in the water away from 11, and 11 kind of tries to get a hold of her on the way down, but she falls. And this is just a really great scene, very eerie and intense, really kind of suspenseful too. You knew that something was going to pop out of that bathtub, right? You just knew it was going to happen. But yeah, I thought it was really great the way that played out. And then we see 11 really shaken up as a result as she comes back to Max. Obviously, she's been shaken up in this universe before, seeing the first, Demogorgon, I guess, Is that what we're calling it? I guess. But this was something that we haven't seen in a while, of her being this shaken up and this kind of scared. So yeah, really good jump scare here and a very eerie sequence for sure. So meanwhile, we see Dustin and Steve are now on the lookout for evil Russians at the mall. I really loved all the stuff with Steve, Dustin, and Robin in this episode. I thought it was really great. Anyway, so that we see them track down a yoga instructor in the process. They think he's an evil Russian. He ends up just being this instructor for a yoga class at the mall. I thought that was really great. So we see Robin then, on the other hand, is back at the ice cream place as she's trying to figure out this code, right? This Russian code, and trying to piece together this kind of, while also trying to translate, because now they have the English translation, and trying to find out what these words mean. And so, as she is trying to figure this out and kind of piecing this together, a delivery man comes and delivers some supplies for the ice cream store. And it's at this point that she figures out that all of this stuff corresponds to different locations in the mall, and that the silver fox is actually the logo of the delivery service at the mall, right? So, because she sees like the silver fox on that guy's jacket, right, as he's walking away. So some really cool stuff here, and really a quick realization here. And this is where I get to a little bit of a step down in the writing. This seems like a really, really big cliche that we see way too much, is these characters like suddenly figuring something out and then piecing it all together, just all of a sudden. Now, I'm not discounting Robin's, intelligence or sense for these things. Maybe she is a very smart person and able to connect these, but it just seemed a little bit too kind of tropey or cliche here, the way this played out, but it is what it is. So later that night, they basically stick around at the mall. They go to the roof, actually, to see what is going on. So they actually see the men rolling out boxes into a supply room while they're surrounded by guards with machine guns, right? So this looks pretty serious. It looks like the evil Russians to me, right? This actually looks like, more than just a delivery service delivering some boxes, right? This does look like something. So we also see that they almost get caught, right? They drop the binoculars on the roof when Steve and Dustin get, into a little bit of a fight. The guard gets up there. They're able to run away quickly from the roof, but ultimate question is what's in the boxes, and we see Dustin ask that in this as well, right? What is in those boxes? What's going on here? Are those boxes kind of supplies to build this machine to open the gate or something like that? That would be my only prediction at this time. But anyways, again, I really did love the kind of sequence that played out here, and we'll have to see how Steve, Dustin, and Robin react, because now things are actually serious. I mean, they can see now, right? They can see the evil Russians and actual plan coming to fruition here, instead of just a bunch of, Russian on this radio broadcast. So anyways, I thought that was a really great scene, and we'll have to see what's in the boxes. All right, so then we see Nancy and Jonathan. I like their part in this episode. It was quite a bit smaller than the last two episodes for sure, but nonetheless, I did like it. So we see Nancy and Jonathan arrive at the woman's house. I believe her name's Miss Driscoll or Draskell. Anyways, and so they go to the house seeking proof of Nancy's story, right? We see that she's laughed at, basically laughed out of the room at the office, at the Hawkins Post, right, by the writers and the editor. They don't believe her, of course. Or at least, even if they did believe her, they recognize that this is not, a story that they could post, right? And, obviously I do get Nancy's frustration here with this, and we see that she wants to be kind of validated, right? She wants to be able, or at least she thinks of herself that she is, she should be in the position to come up with the story and be able to write that in the post, and that's just not what her job description is at this point. And so we see her kind of desperate to get proof of this. So we go to the house now, thinking that, proof of her story will change things, right? And then the rat that the woman kept at her house in the cage will be that proof. And if she's able to bring that in to the guys at the Post, maybe they'll write this story. So that's her thought process. So when they knock on the door at the house, the woman doesn't answer. So all of a sudden, right, right off the bat, we know that something's wrong, right? And even, Nancy says, like, she's an old woman and it's raining, right? Where else would she be? So I like that. So Nancy opens it anyways, right? Like, she just opens the door, goes inside, looking for the woman. So eventually they get to the basement to find the woman eating out of the fertilizer bags herself, and just like rapidly eating this fertilizer from the bags. And that's pretty much where we end off with Nancy and Jonathan in this episode. That's pretty much it. That was not what I was expecting. I was expecting her to be like dead, and this, massive like guts monster is now, walking around down there or something like that. That's what I expected. I did not expect this woman to be eating the fertilizer, and when she's caught doing it, she looks like she stopped. So I don't think she's like a host or anything like that, similar to Billy. I think she's still herself, but I'm still not sure why she's the one eating the fertilizer, and maybe she was the one eating the fertilizer this whole time. So really interesting stuff. It's like, what does this mean? Or has this guts creature or monster already got to her, right? Is maybe the gut monster inside of her, and he's the, or it's the one, right? Getting her to eat all this fertilizer to feed it. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how all this plays out, but I'm sure we'll find out next episode. Anyways, I like that segment there for sure. All right. So to end off the episode, we see Max and Eleven head to Heather's house to see where she is and if she's all right, because now they know that she's been, drowned, I suppose, right? That's what they probably led to believe, in this bathtub. So to their surprise, when they get to her house, they find Billy, but they also find Heather there, who's still alive and looks perfectly fine. Right? And we even see her offer them a cookie. That was a nice little touch there. I like that one. So, and Heather seems perfectly fine. Like, perfectly fine. It doesn't seem like anything's wrong, right? So we see Billy lie to them, says Heather was just sick today, right? That's why we didn't go into work. We're nursing her back to health or something like that, right? So we see this kind of play out, and the two, girls are kind of sent out on their way, right? Because they walk in on this family's dinner, right? That Billy's attending. And so on their way out the door, this was really interesting. We see Billy has this vision almost, and like a really real vision, but he was never there. So I thought this was really cool. So he has this vision of 11 closing the gate from last season, right? And this was really interesting because, again, he wasn't there to see this. So obviously we know someone, or kind of that, I guess that mind flayer, right, is showing him this vision, or at least that's what I got from it. So he, he just met this girl face to face too. He didn't even know who 11 was. And so now he just meets her face to face, and now he's seeing this vision of what she is. So to me, it was like the mind flayer playing this vision to him to tell him who she is and what kind of threat maybe she poses to them, right? As kind of a collective group. Now it seems like, that he's kind of a host for the mind flayer now. So I thought this was really cool, the way this all played out, and all of a sudden the veins in his eyes go black, and we see something just click, like something just kind of turns around everything else, right? His eyeball just kind of, lights up like that, and the veins spread, and it just seems like something clicks inside of him, and also kind of clicks in Heather too, as we see a little bit in just a few moments in the scene. But then we also see where Will is, and he senses the same type of kind of click on, right? Or that switch kind of flipping on. He senses that same type of thing, where we see him after he demolishes, Castle Byers, his fort, after he's very frustrated with, Mike and Lucas kind of moving on from being kids and not wanting to play D&D anymore. So that was a good part too, and I'm not going to talk about that too much right now. But anyway, so he's demolishing the fort, right? He demolishes his fort, and all of a sudden the two boys come out to ask him what's wrong, and he says 2 words. He says, "He's back." So that was really a really kind of chilling scene there to hear that, to hear Will say he's back. That was really crazy. And he's able to sense that still. Really cool. And he's able to kind of hear that sound and feel it kind of in the back of his neck a little bit. So maybe is there still some type of element of the mind flayer still in him? I'm not sure. But really kind of cool stuff. And now Billy is able to sense that too. So then we see Billy and Heather go back to the table, and we see her mom get poisoned as she faints, probably from the wine. And then we see Billy take out the bottle. So obviously he was the one who poisoned her. Then we see Heather takes care of her father with of course, I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it's I'm just gonna call it, I guess, poison or yeah, I forgot what the liquid's called. But anyways, she puts that on the rag, right, and puts it to his mouth, so he gets, he goes unconscious. So, anyways, and when she's doing that, when she's giving her dad the rag, she says, "It'll all be over soon," which is the same thing that Billy did to her back in the building in last episode. So, really cool stuff. And to me, my question is, has she now become another host similar to Billy? And is this the real her trapped, in this body, right? Or is the real her just gone, right? Is this maybe a doppelganger of the real her as it is the doppelganger of Billy? So the doppelganger part is going to play a big part in this kind of thing as well with Billy and Heather, and whether these are somewhat, they're going to be hosts, or they really just are the doppelgangers from the Upside Down that have now transferred into the real world. And so this is really cool. And I'm not sure if maybe she is trapped in this other dimension, the real her. Maybe they just swapped places and the real her's in the Upside Down in this bathtub now. And of course, the doppelganger is now in real life. So there's a lot of stuff going on here with this, but it's really, really interesting. And this is something that we haven't seen before in the show, or at least that I don't think we've seen. And that's something I really wanted from this season. I want some fresh, original story, although it looks like the Mind Flayer and the Upside Down is all coming back again. But this is at least something new, or a new twist on it, and I'm definitely here for it. So anyways, a really great end to the episode here. Alright, so in terms of rating for this episode, I'm going to give this one a 4.4 out of 5. I thought the pacing was a little unbalanced in this episode, where we would have kind of suspenseful, shocking scenes, and then the next scene would just be kind of a, somewhat, relaxed tone instead. The next scene, a lot of this happened with Mike, Lucas, and Will throughout the episode, with them kind of being an upbeat storyline. Same with Steve and Dustin. They had a couple nice scenes in there where it was just a really different tone than what they were trying to go for. And then, and then we come back to that scene later, and it just wouldn't have been as effective. So that was my kind of main problem with this episode, that I felt like the first two kind of stayed away from. Some good mystery and suspense in this episode, especially towards the end, and this whole doppelganger storyline coming in. I really liked that as well. And, of course, the bathtub scene with Heather and Eleven seeing that in the vision. That was really great. And, again, some cliche kind of tropey writing here, similar to Season 2 again. And, I've seen people saying that it's the best season of Stranger Things so far. I'm only 3 episodes in. I think it's definitely better than Season 2 already. I have to say it. Season 2 is definitely a step down to me from Season 1. But I don't know if it's better than Season 1 right now. I think the first 3 episodes, I will definitely take that over the first 3 episodes of Season 3 so far. And that's just me. So I don't know. And maybe it's because of this kind of cliche writing again. I'm not sure. And just some stuff in this episode just felt a little cliche. We saw kind of this scene where, Eleven visits the boys. And that's just, I don't know. I just think that wasn't very original writing. Saying, that, women act on emotions, and then they kind of are joking about farting and stuff. I don't know. I just don't think that's very creative writing, kind of cringy and cliche. So anyways, and maybe that is kind of trying to be realistic with the kids their age, but I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of that stuff. Great cliffhanger with Billy, though, at the end, and really, really intriguing storyline with him going forward. And again, going into the season, if you told me that Billy was going to be this big of a character, I would not have believed you. And I don't think any of the trailers or anything showed that. So they did a really good job in kind of hiding this, and I really like what they're doing with his character. So got to give props there. All right, favorite character for this one, I got to go with Will Byers, played by Noah Schnapp. He actually gave a pretty good performance in this episode. And I think he's been, pretty good throughout the series. But this episode I felt like was maybe one of his best performances of the series. He was great in this one. Will going through this kind of transition as he's stuck in this childhood, right? he's stuck being a child. He just wants to play D&D, you know, with his friends in the summer, and his friends are now moving on. You know, they're in relationship with girls, and he's just kind of left behind. And we see him even destroy Castle Byers over it. Very upset that his friends are kind of abandoning him now. So I thought this was really interesting, and it is really cool as well that he can still sense that this Mind Flayer is coming back, and we're going to see what part he plays in the season. I just hope that he is not affected by this time. Like, he's been through so much so far. I don't know. I feel like it would just be really repetitive to put him through the ringer again this season. So I hope that doesn't happen. I hope Billy is the one who's the victim of all of this, but we'll have to see in the end. Anyways, that'll just about do it for my review of this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. What do you think of it? And what are some of your theories as a result of this ending as to what we might see going forward? But anyways, guys, again, thanks so much for watching. And we'll then see you in the next video for the next episode, Stranger Things Season 3, Episode 4.